Good evening and welcome to the District of Sechelt public hearing for zoning amendment bylaw number 25-314, 2021, Everbright. So I'd like to call to order the public hearing convened under section 464 of the Local Government Act, and the business item of this hearing is zoning amendment bylaw number 25-314, 5681, Everbright. It's a bylaw to amend District of Sechelt zoning bylaw number 25, 1987, to rezone the subject property from R3 to R1 to allow a smaller minimum lot size for subdivision and facilitate a 12-lot layout with 500 square meter lots. All persons who believe that interest in their property is affected by the proposed bylaw will be afforded an opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that is the subject of this hearing. If you have a written submission, please submit it to planning@sechelt.ca before the end of this public hearing. The amendments and related documents can be viewed at the District of Sechelt website at www.sechelt.ca. Notice of this virtual public hearing was advertised in 2 consecutive issues of the Coast Reporter, on the District's website, and social media. Notices were mailed to all owners within 100 meters of the subject area. If you've signed in using the Zoom app and you wish to be added to the speakers list, please let us know by clicking the Raise Hand button. A staff member will then add you to the speakers list and lower your electronic hand as confirmation. If you've dialed in with a telephone only, press *9 to raise your hand and you'll be added to the list. Those calling in will only be identifiable by their phone number. So when it is your turn to speak, I will call on you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. When I call on you to speak, please state your name and address before starting your remarks. The name and address of persons who make written or verbal submissions will form part of the public record. You will have to unmute your microphone when prompted. On the Zoom app, mute and unmute is selected on the lower part of the screen. If you're dialing in, the microphone is muted or unmuted by pressing *6. Please note that when staff enable you to speak on the Zoom app, there will be a brief transition period where it may appear that you have been disconnected. Please be patient, as this is only a momentary glitch and you do not need to log out. When speaking, please begin by stating your full name and address for the record. In the interest of time and comfort for those in attendance, we will be restricting your comments to 5 minutes. If you wish to speak a second time, you will be given a second speaking opportunity after everyone wishing to speak regarding the proposed bylaw has spoken once. Anyone wishing to speak a second time will be limited to 3 minutes. To speak again, please raise your hand to be added to the next speakers list. This public hearing is a statutory process convened for the purpose of hearing from the public on the proposed bylaws. None of you will be discouraged or prevented from making your views known. However, it is important that all who speak at this meeting restrict their remarks to matters contained in the proposed bylaw. If you go off topic, as chair, I will ask you to return to appropriate subject matter or stop your presentation. Members of council may ask questions to clarify points that may not have been clear to them. The purpose of this hearing is for council to listen to submissions brought forward, not to debate with anyone. After this public hearing, council may, without further notice or hearing, give whatever effect to the proposed bylaw it deems appropriate. The planner will now provide an overview of the bylaw, after which the applicant may speak.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I will share my screen here for the presentation. So we have a public hearing here for a rezoning application for property on Henderson Road. There we go. Property highlighted in blue here, fronting Nickerson Road in between Oracle to the north and Norwest Bay to the south. The applicant is proposing to rezone from the existing R3 zone to the R1 zone. This is basically in order to allow the 500 meter squared minimum parcel size in the R1 zone, which would facilitate a subdivision layout, potentially with 12 lots, where the existing R3 zone has a 900 square meter minimum lot size. At this stage, though, we're dealing at the rezoning level only, focusing on land use and not ultimate subdivision design. So the adoption of the rezoning, if that went ahead, does not lock them into one particular subdivision pattern. As you can see, the property is currently zoned R3. Under the official community plan, it is within the residential land use designation, as are all the properties around it. The residential land use designation does support a range of residential uses, including more intensive residential uses such as duplexes, smaller lot subdivisions, which under the current OCP, small lot is basically anything under 600 square meters, as well as accessory dwelling units, laneway houses, carriage houses, etc., and even getting into some limited ground-oriented housing forms such as townhouses or row houses. And again, the residential land use designation really looking for supporting a mix of housing diversity, a mix of lot sizes. So what we have is at this time, the amendment bylaw looking to really just rezone from R3 to R1 without changing any of the parameters of R1 as it exists now. However, council could consider making changes to the R1 zone on a site-specific basis, subject to not changing land use or density that would trigger a new public hearing, but things like building heights or setbacks, for example, could be regulations that council consider amendments to that would apply to this particular property. First reading was given back in September, second reading in November. Originally, a public hearing was scheduled for November 24th, which was canceled due to a notification error, and we're here now tonight for the public hearing. Just to note that a community amenity contribution has been agreed to in the amount of $35,000. This was calculated in accordance with OCP policies and the recently adopted council policy on community amenity and affordable housing contributions, and that $35,000 would be split equally between the amenity reserve fund and the affordable housing fund. And this would be a condition of adoption of the rezoning. If the rezoning was adopted, we get into subdivision, and associated with that is the development permit requirement, development permit area number 8. It deals with intensive residential and infill housing and applies to small lot subdivisions like this. That would be something that would come back to council as part of the subdivision review process. And that again looks at site planning around small lot subdivisions, is getting into some aspects of building scale, setbacks, parking and access, and different parameters there. So tonight we're here to gain feedback from the public hearing, and after that consider possible amendments to the rezoning or how to mitigate any concerns. Looking forward to potentially third reading. Any other conditions of rezoning beyond the amenity contributions agreed to. The Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure would need to approve the bylaw based on the proximity to the highway, and then subsequent to that, looking at potential adoption. And if the rezoning is adopted, then we're getting into the subdivision and development permit application review. And that's all I have.
Thank you. I'm not sure if the applicant is in the gallery. If they are, would the applicant like to speak?
I don't see the applicant or their agent in the gallery.
Thank you. So in that case, we will now invite persons to provide verbal submissions regarding the bylaw amendments. And I will first call for submissions for those who have signed onto the speakers list. And I see we have a number of them already. Before you begin your comments to council, please state your name and address for the record. So our first speaker is Claudia Cuesta. And Claudia, we'll have you brought into the gallery and we will give you 5 minutes to speak.
So, Mayor, Council, and Planning.
Okay, hang on one second, Claudia. It sounds like you have another device also working there because we've got some echo happening.
Okay, yes, we have. I'm going to move away from here.
It's okay, we just turn off the volume.
Okay, turn your volume off.
I think I gotta turn my speaker off,
No,
right?
choose the volume off. Oh, yes, we can turn the speaker off, right. It's here. And disconnect speaker.
Yeah.
Okay. And here. Disconnect audio.
And just for council and any members in the gallery, there's a number of speakers that have requested that documents be shared during their presentation. So that's what I'm doing now. During a number of speakers, and they'll be referring to documents that will be shared on screen.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Council and Planning. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the many problems that we anticipate with this proposed
Claudia,
subdivision
sorry,
rezoning.
I have to interrupt you. Claudia, could you give us
Yes.
your name and address, please?
My name is Claudia Cuesta, and I am at 5550 Nickerson Road. So again, thank you for the opportunity to participate in discussing the subdivision rezoning. We regret we're late with these comments because we were not informed by the district despite our proximity to it. We only learned about it when the developer placed a sign outside the site without a date for the public hearing. We take issue that the district has never communicated with us or advised us of this project or the process or consultation. We consider this unfair and we hope it was not intended as manipulation. So we are going to point out a few of the issues that my partner and I, Bill Baker, have identified with this proposal. So I had brought into the district these drawings that Bill did. So is it possible to have any of these drawings up? Oh, here it is, right, okay.
Okay, so can we have drawing
Can
shows the 12 lots to begin with, please? Okay, thank you. Yes, so, when that's the 9 lot one. Let's see here.
The 12 lots, that's it.
12 lot is this one coming up right
Yeah.
now. Okay. So when we did review the application for rezoning, we decided that we should look at a number of things, including what the density would be like. So the little black squares that you see on this drawing are indicating the amount of massing of the houses on this development. So the other thing that we noticed was that the proposed road allowance heading north to Oracle was to be a 10 meter wide allowance. So we thought we'd look at that and see what the accessibility to that development would look like. We found that garbage trucks or fire trucks or any large service vehicles would require a turnaround diameter of 14 meters. The proposed road width on this development would be only a 10 meter wide road allowance would be insufficient for large trucks to turn around unless they use somebody's driveway. The other thing that we looked at in this subdivision was the density covered by a paved road, by the driveways, the sidewalk, the patios, and the roof coverage. The majority of the surface is impermeable, with most of the natural water diverted to the storm sewer. The existing old growth trees on the subdivision and adjacent lot will be affected by removal during the process of development. What is the district's policy on the retention of these trees? Walkability is restricted to the roadway of the development leading to Nickerson Road, with a dangerous crossing to an existing sidewalk on the west side of Nickerson Road. Will the grade from the proposed access road into the driveway of the lots be less than 20%? What consideration has been taken to ensure that potential future developments to the north and south of the property will not be landlocked or necessitate the removal of existing dwellings? Most of these things apply to the other two drawings too. This is the denser of the three drawings. The other one, and so this one here would, if this one were to go into it, it would have to have a revision to the existing R1 bylaw. May we have the next one, please, with the 9 lots. Okay, so this one shows another massing of the 9 lots, and it would be allowable under the existing R1 zoning. It essentially has more or less this same objections as the 12 lot application. There would be understandably more room for natural growth to be installed.
Okay, 5 lots.
And so the next one, please. Okay, this one here would be retained under R3, would be a 6 lot subdivision, which would, of the 3, would be most agreeable to the majority of people in our community that we did the survey with.
Bill and Claudia, your 5 minutes is up. Do you only need a short time here, or do you want to come back? And
So can we just add something to the end here, since we're 2 people? Is that okay? Or to sum these up?
yeah, go ahead and sum up then. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so for us, it's taken the wrong direction here. We're looking at a subdivision which would eventually encourage other subdivisions of this nature. And because of the size of the road allowance and the density, it looks very much like the subdivision up at the top of Nickerson Road, which is a strata subdivision, and we were wondering if if this was going to be a strata subdivision or
A freehold.
a freehold subdivision. So that was one of the things. The other thing that we were concerned about was the continuation of having subdivisions that go out into the landscape. We found that and over time that a lot of municipalities now are looking at having subdivisions out into the open landscape and highways, and more density out there has subjected individuals into returning into the city for work purposes. Lots of heavy traffic, a lot of consumption of the fossil fuels, and the use of automobiles. We were thinking that perhaps in a small community like ours, that the density should be oriented into the downtown core. In other words, we would suggest that the changing of bylaws to allow higher density in the downtown core, such as 10-story mini high-rise buildings that would allow people to live in the community, to participate with all of the amenities that a community has to do without having to drive around. And also the exploration of laneway housing and housing of that nature, which would allow for density.
So putting density subdivisions is a 1950 concept based on the automobile and cheap gas. It's environmentally unsustainable, and this strategy of higher density is more applicable to an urban core where there is walkability and access to services and shops. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Neil Mackey. Thank you. Mr. Mackey, please state your name and address, and you'll be allotted 5 minutes. Mr. Mackey, you'll need to unmute.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you. So good evening, Council. My name is Neil Mackey, and I live at 5546 Nickerson Road. So I'm one of the neighboring lots next to the lot in question. So I was originally conflicted when evaluating this proposal because the self-interested part of my brain liked this proposal as it would set the precedent for the block and would allow me to subdivide my property and then make off with a bunch of cash. But ultimately, I think that train of thought is selfish, greedy, and short-sighted. And I think that's what this proposal is, short-sighted. As you can see from this first slide, the rezoning proposal, if approved with its requested variance, will result in a wall of buildings. This will reduce green space for habitat, reduce permeable surfaces for stormwater retention, and I think just generally isn't reflective of planning's goal of carefully blending new development into the environment. I don't think anyone would consider this carefully blended into the environment when looking at it. Could I have the next slide, please? So alternatively, if we kept with the current zoning as maintained, I think the lot could be subdivided into 7 lots. I think the last 2 lots would need a little minor variance to fit 2 in there. But this would be what I feel like a better transition from the large neighboring lots to these mid-sized lots. You would retain the green space, the permeable areas for stormwater retention, and you'd still have a substantial increase in density, almost 7-fold. But I think that density would be more reflective of the district's vision of blending new development in with the natural environment, as stated in the OCP. So I would request that council reject this rezoning request and maintain the current R3 zoning and allow for this gradual increase in density, which both harmonizes the need for further housing, but also without eroding the kind of characteristic beauty that has defined and does define Sechelt. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Council, any questions of the presenter? Seeing no questions, thank you, Mr. Mackey. And move on to the next speaker. Next speaker, Magnus Enfeld.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Okay, so my name is Magnus Enfeld and I live on 5560 Nickerson Road. Ian has some of my slides. Could you put that in presentation mode, Ian, please? Thank you. So, Mayor and Council, I'm here today to provide my input or our input on this rezoning application related to the 5556, 5558 Nickerson Road location. So, yeah, that's next slide. So I'm an immediate neighbor to the subject property on the north side. As you'll see on this map, the yellow lot and the green box is the subject property. Next slide, please. So in terms of as you saw on that previous slide, I share 180 somewhat meters of property line with the subject property, and I've looked at the context for our input to this, what I call the plan that has been that we're talking about today. Is our input is based on the proposed subdivision plan available to the community, which I call the plan. Which is the 12 lots, the 522 to 530 in size, a road along the south side of the property turning north. I'm also basing my input on Andrew Allen's statements, what he said at the AGM of the West Sechelt Community Association on November 30th, where he clearly stated that the DPA 8 guidelines would apply to the subdivision if the rezoning was approved. He also stated that it's recommended that any condition on the future development, such as specific DPA 8 guidelines, should be included in the rezoning decision, if that was of importance. Further, I've got clarification from Ian Haig, Development Planning Manager, that the proposed subdivision plan is just a concept plan and that it may change. And also, I'm basing my input on a discussion with Henry Unger yesterday, he's the representing Everbright Ventures, about his vision for this subdivision, to understand what his thoughts are. And my understanding from Harungar is that he's envisioning single-story bungalow rancher type buildings with no inclusions of suites and a protection and retention of trees along the northern property line. And for those, wait with that slide, please, Ian. And the DPA guidelines, for those who are not aware of them, those relates to the intensive residential and infill housing, and it's a part of the OCP, and it applies to small lot residential subdivisions with a minimum lot size of 300 to 600 square meters. Next slide, please. So our main concerns with this rezoning. So I've overlaid the plan on the drawing, so you can see how our lot is interfacing with this potential future subdivision. And as you'll see, our biggest concern here is the height of buildings and protection of sightlines. The impact of what Mr. Mackey presented, the potential wall of buildings. So that's I share his concerns about that. Concerns about the scale of buildings related to the small lot sizes and related to existing homes. We're concerned about the excessive density and concerned about protection of mature trees. In addition to that, I know this is not what we're talking about here, but in terms of the plan itself, concerned that the ability for large vehicles to turn at the end of the new road. The plan is a concept plan, and we don't actually know, the community don't know actually what happens with the actual development once the rezoning is done. And so there's a concerns about the process of how this will actually be approved later on. I know that this is stated in bylaws, etc., but that is a concern. We're talking about something here, and we might see something else in the future. Next slide, please. And this is just a picture of mature trees. There is, between the two lots, not very many trees, but as you see, number one, it's a beautiful arbutus tree on or near the joint property line, and also a row of mature trees on the driveway. You see the location of those. So those are sort of just visualizing my concerns. Next slide, please. So with all this taken into consideration, we actually support this rezoning under certain conditions. We know that the DPA 8 guidelines apply. We've got that confirmed from the district, and that they apply to the development, and that addresses our main concerns. So therefore, we support the rezoning application under the following conditions. Any rezoning approval includes the following limitations on the future development, and that should be included into the rezoning decision. So all of this.
Mr. Enfeld?
Yeah.
How much more time do you need? Your time is up.
I have these 6 points. This is my last slide. So all these conditions that I have for my approval of the rezoning are aligned with the DPA 8 guidelines and the developer's vision. So the height limited to 1 story for each future home, mature trees being protected, secondary suites not permitted, and that the actual lot size stays as per the plan, because that's also a requirement of the DPA 8. And that any subsequent subdivision plan approval would be required that the location of the subdivision access road is as shown in the plan, i.e. along the southern part turning north. And it's also key to include a hammerhead solution at the subdivision access road to enable turning for large vehicles. And that is aligned with the developer's vision that he confirmed to me yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you. You've put a lot of time into that. Thank you very much. Council, any questions for the presenter? Seeing no questions, we will move on to the next speaker. Next speaker is indicated as Bill Baker.
This is Bill Baker. I've already talked at the beginning of this session.
Yeah.
With Claudia Cuesta. So do I still have time to talk again?
Okay, can you turn off your other video again? Or sorry, other audio that you have?
Audio?
We're having a little bit of echo.
Okay. I've already talked with Claudia Cuesta at the beginning of this session. Do you want me to talk again?
Not necessarily. I think we've got your points and your comments. We gave you a little extra time when you did your other presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, move
All right.
on to the next person, please.
Thank you. Next speaker is, it looks like Art, is it Koyman? Hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. My name is Art Koyman.
Okay, Mr. Koyman, it sounds like you have another device
Yes,
as
we do.
well.
Yeah, address 6334 Norwest Bay Road.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't have much to add after everybody else's comments, but I do feel that this rezoning from 12 lots is really not acceptable. We are fortunate enough to be surrounded by properties that are larger than a postage stamp. To continuously rezone these properties will lead to encouraging others to apply for rezoning, and you can't refuse them once you set an example. You are also taking away the opportunity for others to purchase land not typical to a subdivision. I realize you can still progress, but 12 lots on that property doesn't even make sense. I also believe that the application should have been turned down by the planning department immediately. Why do we plan if everything that's planned before is rezoned? What's the point in having a planning department? I've seen properties, I used to live in Gibson's, I've seen them rezoned 3 times in one year. And that's all about I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Dennis Lozinski. And please start by stating your name and your address, and then you will be given 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Dennis Lozinski, and I live at 6265 Bailey Road. I want to add a bit of context to where I am. I am basically situated at the back of the property, and I've been living on Bailey Road since 1996. So well before any of the development up here was completed. The only thing here was the Burtnick home and a lot of wildlife. We were fortunate in purchasing a property when Jorgensen started his development in 2002, and that's where we are now, right next to the proposed development. I want to point out that my points of view are in support of this rezoning. I'd like to also let you know what this property looks like and how it's evolved, the Nickerson property. The original owners had a farm there. They had geese, chickens, gardens, and they sold in 2015. The new owners converted that home into a grow-op. And as a consequence, the home and the property was ruined and now unoccupied. The current owner purchased in 2020, and the homes are filled with mold and are inhabitable. The property now appears to be a boneyard of discarded grow-op supplies, equipment, vehicles are stored in the back field. So over the past 21 years, we've witnessed development of West Sechelt from Derby all the way up to Tyler, and are realistic in understanding the need for affordable homes in our community. The proposed small size lots should equate to a lower cost per lot, allowing for more families a chance for home ownership. We support this proposal under the condition that the District of Sechelt DPA guidelines be included in the bylaw to ensure this subdivision is a good fit with the existing neighborhood. Specifically, we request that building height for this zoning amendment bylaw be single story. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, any questions of the proponent, the presenter? Thank you. All right, we have a number of people still on the list, but if you would like to speak, please raise your hand to be added to the speakers list. If you have phoned in, I'm just going to see if anybody has phoned in. Nobody has phoned in. So on the Zoom platform, please raise your hand and you'll be added to the speakers list. So our next speaker is Raymond Haig? Please start by stating your name and your address, and then you'll be given 5 minutes to speak. Thank you.
My name is Raymond Haig. I live at 6259 Bailey Road with my wife, Dolores. We bought the property in 2006 and have enjoyed the backyard of the lot that is requesting the rezoning. We live next to Dennis, and we back onto the middle of the rear end of the proposed lots. I wrote a letter into planning, stressing that I also agree with people that say 500 square meters is just too small. I like the layouts that Neil presented and Claudia presented, showing the 6 and 7 lots, which make a lot more sense with the adjoining properties, including our property, which is probably twice the size of the 500 square meters. I also mentioned the safety of the subdivision, the fact that there is no exit for larger vehicles and no ability for them to turn around. Also, no sidewalks, which means if anybody parks on the street, then fire trucks can't get by. I know this is not part of the subject, but I noticed that the lane that they propose is to go up to Oracle. But the question being, how long would it take before that lane was actually extended to Oracle so vehicles could get around? It just seems to me that the planning department needs to revise and change the zoning or change the plan of the actual subdivision. On that basis, I would oppose the rezoning of the property. It seems to me that the 900 square meter requirement for R3 is more insufficient for proper dwellings, more in keeping with the larger lots on either side of them and the larger lots to the east on Bailey Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions of the presenter? Seeing no questions, thank you, Mr. Haig. So just a reminder to those in the gallery, if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. You'll be added to the speakers list. And a reminder that if you have a written submission, please submit it to planning@sechelt.ca. So our next speaker is, okay, couldn't quite read it, Aleister Blair. Please start by stating your name and your address.
Yeah, good evening. Aleister Blair, 5566 Nickerson. So Madam Mayor, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak. So I'm a neighbor of Mr. Enfeld's, and he and I have been communicating quite a bit and collaborating on this rezoning proposal. And I I think you saw from his presentation the amount of detail and thought that has gone into that. And I just wanted to share that, I'm fully in alignment with the presentation that was made by Mr. Enfeld. And it's based on the information that we know today. And so if there is a change in the scope that the developer has, then I think we'd need to, I would need to reevaluate my support. But at this time, I'm fully in alignment with Mr. Enfeld's presentation. So thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you very much. Council, any questions of the presenter? Not seeing any. Thank you. Moving on to our next speaker, Stephanie Watson. So Stephanie Watson, please state your name and your address for the record, and then you'll be given 5 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity to address council. My name is Stephanie Watson, and my address is 6268 Northwest Bay Road. So I am down the street. I'll be below the proposed subdivision. I will say I don't approve of the current plan. I think it's sort of a gateway for the district to propose more rezoning of that area. You're sticking 12 small lots right in the middle of an area of single or dwelling homes. We are, and it just isn't suitable. And it suggests that you're hoping or anticipating that other homes, other properties will then follow suit. And that's a great opportunity financially for people, but it is not in line with the character of this neighborhood and quite outside of what the OCP suggests for this area. I am concerned about issues such as parking, the traffic, vehicles being able to get to and from. I do see on your plan that there is a possibility, or it looks like a road coming from Oracle heading towards, so it suggests that you're anticipating that other lots will follow suit or that they will ask for rezoning in that area. And so that's going to really heavily densify this area, which has been single family homes for a number of years. I like the green space. I am concerned also with the water runoff after these large rains, and any large rains, the water runs heavily through my property down towards Northwest Bay Road. So I think it would be really important that any development there really pays attention to the runoff that will come downhill towards Northwest Road, and you're ensuring that it runs off towards Nickerson and not our properties. Yeah, I think it doesn't suit, and it's, I think maybe 6 at the most would be appropriate. And if you're actually talking about affordable homes, these will not be affordable homes. They will be small homes, but we know that these will not be affordable housing. Affordable housing is rentals, and you will need to build apartments if you're looking for actual people having homes. These, they're going to go for at least 700, that. And that is not a first-time home for a young family. So, I find those ideas that these are going to be affordable homes is a misnomer. It's not. That's all I'm going to say. I just really don't approve of it. And I think it's kind of going to be just a gateway for more development in this. And I think that the planning department and the district should be really open and honest and say, we want to rezone this area and not just stick one little lot and call that R1 when the rest of us are R3. It just doesn't work. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions for the presenter? No questions. Thank you, Ms. Watson. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak for the first time? If so, please raise your hand to be added to the speakers list. Or if you're on a phone, *9. And we are looking for written submissions to be emailed to planning@seashelt.ca. So there's one more with their hand up. Thank you. William McIntosh. Please state your name and your address for the record, please.
So it's Aleister Blair again. You're unmuting me instead of William.
All right, Mr. McIntosh, there we go. All right, name and address, Mr. McIntosh.
Can you hear me?
Can hear you just fine.
Okay. William McIntosh, and I'm at 6268 Northwest Bay Road. I would just reiterate the position that was expressed by Stephanie Watson in that overall, I think this density is not consistent with the general nature of the neighborhood. I think council, when you consider this, you should keep in mind some of the basic points that are laid out in the official community plan. The vision, identity, and goals of the plan for West Sechelt state that West Sechelt will maintain the feeling of a West Coast community possessing enviable natural surroundings where new development is carefully blended into the environment. Protection of natural areas for habitat value and neighborhood enjoyment is a high priority for any development applications. Among the specific points that relate to the DPA designation, I would note in terms of site planning, it says it should retain existing mature vegetation and other natural features as part of the site layout. Arborist reports are required to confirm health of trees, replacement trees are required. The orienting of the infill should minimize overlooking adjacent to residential properties and building heights. The scale should be sensitive to the surrounding homes. Use building setbacks similar to those of adjacent properties, particularly for front and side yard setbacks. The scale at which this is being proposed with 12 lots, I see would make it difficult to comply with a number of those general conditions that are set out in the official community plan. I would think that with 12 lots, you're not going to have much room for maintaining vegetation and the trees in the area. I would note also, as Ms. Watson said, it appears from the concept plan here with the lane that starts going northward in the direction of Oracle, the only purpose of that would be as if a road's going to continue. And obviously that would mean that if somebody takes over the next property above, they could seek to have it rezoned in order that they continue the lane. Ultimately, I just see it that if you allow this high density on this lot, future development, again, it would be inconsistent then if you suddenly go from 12 to 6 to 12. The nature of the planning I see here, because they are long lots coming in from Nickerson, is that the lot below would have to have the roadway widened. All the housing would abut all the properties that come off of Northwest Bay. You'd also have probably a road between the property above and the property above that. You're building a very large area of high density, which is inconsistent with the whole neighborhood. I think you should keep that in mind. But so as the proposal is put forward, I would suggest that rezoning it is inappropriate in these circumstances. The developer may be able to still make a good return on their investment if they are limited to only 6 lots. I would be concerned about the retention of vegetation, knowing that the developer is also the one who is developing the Bly Road property, and I happen to walk along that regularly. The lot is completely being denuded of trees. It also appears that also included some trees that belong to the district on its setback from the road. What does that, I know that may be features that go to the development permit process, but it's something to keep in mind that if you've got this small packed lots, there's not going to be much room to keep any trees. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Council, any questions for the presenter? All right, seeing none. Are there any speakers who'd like to speak for the first time? If so, please raise your hand and you'll be added to the speakers list. We have one speaker who'd like to speak for the second time. I don't see any other speakers looking to speak for the first time. Also, just a reminder, if you have a written submission, please email it to planning@seashelt.ca before the end of this public hearing. Seeing no other speakers who'd like to speak for the first time, Mr. Baker, 3 minutes for you. Again, your name and your address.
Yes, well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak for a second time. It's Bill Baker at 5550 Nickerson Road. The proposed road allowance going north towards Oracle Road is a 10-meter wide, suggestion for a road. Under bylaw number 430-1, a 10-meter wide right of way is an urban half road with a development only on one side. The minimum requirement for an urban local road is a 14-meter road. Why is this not applied to this proposed development? How will a 10-meter wide road serve the future developments in this area? That's one issue. The other issue that we have, we're right adjacent to the application for the rezoned lot. We're on the south side. We have many mature fir trees right on the lot line, but they're all on our side of the line. The developer would require to remove a substantial amount of material to allow for the road allowance, and that would affect any of the trees that we have on that side of our property. There would be a substantial excavation all the way down to Nickerson Road at that point. So the trees would be effective, and we would like to know what the policy is of the district to preserve historical trees. I think that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, so anyway, by having a 10-meter laneway all the way up to Oracle Road, it would be incongruent to any other developments going into the area with a subdivision that would still comply to the R3 zoning, but have a minimum of 6 lots. How is a 10-meter wide laneway going to service a community? 10 feet wide laneways are normally what implies or what serves a strata development. So are they implying by having the property rezoned that the proposed development that will go in there will be strata? or will it be a freehold? That's all I have to say, and I thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker up for the second time is Magnus Enfeld. Again, name and address, please.
My name is Magnus Enfeld. I live at 5560 Nickerson Road. So, Mayor and Council, I just wanted to state I was a bit rushed at my conclusion slide. I just wanted to make sure that that information is included in my written submission as well, the whole presentation. So you will see the details there. And I hope I made it clear that my support for the rezoning is under certain conditions, and all those conditions are supported by the DPA 8 guidelines, and they're also aligned with the developer's vision for the development. So I just wanted to conclude with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers who would like to speak to the bylaw before us? If you do, please raise your hand and you'll be added to the speakers list. And I will ask 3 times. Mr. Henderson. Thank you. Please provide your name and address for the record. And as it's your first time, you'll be allowed 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Uncharacteristically, I don't think I'll take 5 minutes. My name is John Henderson. I'm chair of the Sea Shelton District Chamber of Commerce. I live at 6137 Sea Shelton Inlet Road in East Purpose Bay. I just want to convey, as council knows, our support for increased density. I think I want to also offer to the neighbors of the proposed development that there's a development that happens to be on Sea Shelton Inlet Road called the Ani, or Edgewater, I guess now, developed by Ani, the Ani group. And I remember some very strong concerns about that development before I was elected mayor. We happened to drive through that last night with a number of other vehicles, and I was struck by how livable it was, and the number of young families and retired people that live in very close proximity to each other. I think the issue of density is something that we as Sea Shelton, as the community, must come to grips with in all parts of Sea Shelton. That is how we create a livable and sustainable community. So, as I say, I won't take my full 5 minutes, Mayor Seegers, but just to say that we support it. We respect the neighbors' concerns, but we think that the way to create a livable and affordable housing is to increase density. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Again, to remind all of those in the gallery, if you'd like to speak to this bylaw, please raise your hand and you'll be added to the speakers list. We have Stephanie Watson added, and Stephanie is speaking for the second time. So Stephanie, you'll be allotted 3 minutes. Please start by stating your name and your address for the record, please.
My name is Stephanie Watson, and I live at 6268 Northwest Bay Road. Thank you for allowing me to say something again. I do want to say I am offended that Mr. Henderson was allowed to speak. We're not asking, this is our concerns. We live in the neighborhood. It's impacting us. I don't care what the Chamber of Commerce has to say on this issue. I didn't know they would be invited. I was told anybody that lived within a certain range would be the people that would be on this tonight. Yes, I agree density is an issue. And I agree housing is an issue, but it needs to be put in a place that's appropriate, not dropped into the middle of an R3 zone with single family houses on larger lots with lots of green space. This is why we live here. This is why we chose this area. If I wanted to live in the West End, I would live in the West End because of the high density and all the opportunities it provides. I don't. I live here. I've lived here for almost 20 years. And the ever-changing complexion of this area is a concern. We are losing more and more green space, and more of these developments are coming up. And this one is inappropriate, especially if you look at where it's located, right in the middle of this R3 zone. And it is going to seriously impact a few people that have lived here for some time. I think it should be rethought. I like the idea of maybe 6 homes, but I think 12 is excessive. And I just wanted to say that. And I think that this meeting should have stayed and remained for those that are going to be significantly impacted. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions for the presenter? Seeing no questions, we will move on to the next speaker. Again, a reminder to raise your hands if you'd like to be added to the speakers list. Lori Mcconnell, I believe, is a first-time speaker. So we could give you 5 minutes. So please start by stating your name and your address for the record. Thank you.
My name is Lori Mcconnell. My address is 5571 Nickerson Road. I'm approximately 2 driveways up to the left. And I've lived here for 32 years and seen many changes to the neighborhood. When I bought my house, I was the last house on the left going up the hill for quite some ways. And I have adapted to many developments and housing changes around the neighborhood. I think 12 is much too tight for the lot, and I agree with many of my neighbors that it introduces the possibility of a trend for rezoning and continuing the type of density that we have at the top of the hill with the townhomes. And I'd like to see a maximum of 6. I even prefer 3 for that lot. We're not going to get affordable housing anywhere here with 500-meter lots and single-family homes. I would be much happier to see more co-ops and mix. If anything's going to happen here, I would rather see live-work places and not on that lot. We've dealt with a lot of challenges in West Sechelt. We have a lot of water issues in the summer. I've had neighbors that have had runoff issues from housing, from lots being cleared above them, to the point where we had neighbors using our bathroom for an entire winter because their entire septic field had flooded back into their house. So and we've seen in BC the problems with removing all the vegetation on hills. I can't imagine how the approach to that driveway is going to be handled with Nickerson the way it is. And there's no parking on Nickerson on the road that is safe from Oracle down. So for those reasons, I'm not in support of this rezoning as it's been presented. I'd like to see a maximum of 6 and all of the mature trees retained. And I have a yard that is shared with a neighbor to the south of me all the way across, and we have a wildlife corridor. And I believe that we need to take into account our wildlife and green spaces as well for a truly harmonious environment, which is why a lot of people live up in West Sechelt and chose not to buy close to town. So thank you. And I also want to say I really appreciate this format for public hearings. It's been incredibly polite. Everybody speaks one at a time. Even people with strong opinions have been well spoken, and I think we should do this all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Any questions for the presenter? Seeing no questions, we have Claudia Cuesta, and this is for the second time. So Claudia, name and address, and you'll be provided with 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Claudia Cuesta. Sorry, we got the technical issues again here. Yes. So 5550 Nickerson Road. And I just want to detail Stephanie Watson and Lori for so clearly articulating that we are a very special neighborhood and block in Seashell, and that it should be considered, it should be very thoughtfully considered so that we don't become a ghetto, and so that we don't become a ghetto. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have one more hand, William McIntosh, speaking for the second time. And just a reminder to those in the gallery, if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. You'll be added to the speakers list and you'll be given an opportunity to speak. So Mr. McIntosh, please state your name. You'll have to unmute yourself and then state your name and address for the record, and you'll be provided with 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, William McIntosh, 6268 Northwest Bay Road. The issue of density was brought up by Mr. Henderson. And as Ms. Watson put it, there's an appropriate place for density. It's all very well and nice to include a larger number of properties up here, but what does that end up doing? You can have more people reliant upon automobile traffic. The bus service here is not conducive to someone wanting really to have an active lifestyle, to get involved with things. It's quite difficult, and it's a bit of about a 20-minute walk to get to the village. There are no other, the only local amenity is the one Mason Place corner shop there. Again, you're just creating more people to rely upon automobiles. And is that sustainable? If you look at it in a broader way, that you densify the outer areas just so people can travel more by cars? Or do you want to densify an area where all the amenities are nearby? So I would just suggest that, or reiterate, 12 lots is just excessively dense for this neighborhood, and in the long run, it isn't conducive to a healthier Seashell. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the gallery who would like to speak to the bylaw on the floor? We have no other hands up. If you'd like to speak, I will call 3 times for speakers. And a reminder that if you have a written submission, please submit it to planning@seashell.ca prior to the end of this public hearing. So I'd like to ask, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this matter before us? If so, please raise your virtual hand to be added to the speakers list. I'll ask again, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this bylaw before us? And I'm going to ask one final time. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this matter before us this evening? Seeing no other hands up, I will ask staff if we received any further submissions for the public hearing. We have. Thank you. Floria, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have received 4 email submissions in our planning inbox, and they will be included in the record. The names are Gary Swain of 6246 Sunrise Boulevard, Susan Harmon of 5571 Nickerson Road, Dean Schutz, of 5588 Nickerson Road, and Patricia Swain at 6246 Sunrise Boulevard. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, seeing no further hands up, I will adjourn this public hearing and remind everyone that no further information is to come forward to council regarding this proposed bylaw. Thank you and good evening.